Are you at the Sugar Hill Museum?
I am.
Great.
Yes.
So we would love to have a look around at your exhibition there.
Sure.
The vegetable garden and
correct. So wait, we have only 20 minutes? You told
Yes.
me? Oh boy. Okay. So do you want me to just give you a quick tour around and then you ask me questions?
I would love that. I've seen it. I saw it in person myself. It's an extraordinary exhibition in such a beautiful space. If anyone hasn't visited the Sugar Hill Children's Museum, they really should. They do artists in residence programs as well as exhibitions and lots of family programming. I was particularly taken with how there are music. They play music. They have these playlists that seem to respond to the art that's on view or to extend your experience of the space. So
a little bit of the entrance of the museum.
Yes.
Of the group show of former resident artists here at Sugar Hill. But anyway, this is the entrance to my show, which is the culmination of my artist residency that I started in. It was supposed to be, it's normally a year, but it started in fall of 2019. And it was going to culminate with a show, with a solo show last summer. But because of the pandemic, it was interrupted in March. I mean, it was interrupted in the sense that I no longer had a studio, my beautiful studio space that I had here, that it was provided by the museum. I no longer had access to that, but however, the museum did extend my residency virtually. So that was very nice.
So where did you make the work then?
Well, so in the show, maybe I'll just walk in here slowly. Hopefully I won't make you dizzy. So during the residency, I did mostly works on fabric, including or especially this large piece that is sort of, I call it a quilt, but it's also a tapestry. And this piece took 5 months. So it took almost the entire time I was in the studio here at the Sugar Hill Museum. And the rest of other fabric works I did during the residency, but not here, physically here at the museum. Yes. Then
the title of this piece, Lina, is
Mother. So it's like mother, but moth.
Right, because it's inspired by your mother, but also you can see the shape of the insect in the center.
Yes. Well, to be honest, so the way this work started was with some fabric that I had digitally printed at the Joan Mitchell Art Center in New Orleans while I was there on residence in 2017. And I basically took different food wrappings from the different resident artists. I'm gonna try to zoom in. I'm not sure how good the quality is, but if you look a bit close, you can see here.
It's this sort of green netting, right? Oh, I see. Yeah, they're actually wrapping. Like
yes, I think that's like veggie sticks. Right. So many of these wrappings, I wove them together, like the actual wrappings that were collected from different resident artists. And it was something kind of new that I was doing, and I was not satisfied with the actual weaving that I did. So many times when that happens, I just put it aside as a material to use as a material. So, and I did incorporate that into other works, but I also took a photo of that weaving And at the center, at the Joe Mitchell Center, they had a wonderful 36-inch inkjet printer. So a couple of other artists and we bought a roll of muslin, and so I did a printout of this, and I had this rolled up in the studio for like 3 years, and then that was sort of my goal to do something with these fabrics. So when I put together the two, I have two panels of the same image, but one was a mirrored image. And when I put it together, I saw this image of an animal. I wasn't sure what kind of animal it was. So basically here where you see this feature, all of that was simply highlighted, like it just kind of, I simply kind of outlined, an image that was already there. And then from there, I just added all of these other things, all these other forms. And it was interesting because having children come into the studio, I would ask them like, what do you see? Do you see an animal? And they saw spiders, frogs, horses, insects, all kinds of, which I actually see. I see all of those animals, and I actually love that. But I ended up using the moth title because definitely there is a motherness to it, and also this is a crochet flower that my mom crocheted, and she passed away 11 years ago. So it's something kind of personal and special that it made it into the work. So and there are other materials that also were like this fabric was from a bag that I had in Peru, that I bought when I went to Peru, and I had it for a long time. And then I just kind of I cut it out and kept the fabric. And also the seashells are also from necklaces that I wore at some point, and that I kept. And so it has different materials that are personal. And then there's all these like food nets and materials that I got from Materials for the Arts. So I'm really keen on using repurposed materials, like not buying. I try not to buy anything because we have such an abundance of good stuff going into the landfill. So I try to use any of that I can. So
abundance,
that was a very long
such
answer.
a good word associated with this particular, presentation of your work. I was struck by the multiplicity of various different materials, particularly repurposed materials in your work. I mean, I know you've embedded, it's paper pulp, it's weavings, it's textile, and it has been, but the range and the complexity of the design was really striking.
Thanks so much. Yes, this piece, it was, like I said, 5 months in the making, and it was a bit hard. Like I was really focused on finishing this piece alone, because normally I work on more than one piece, but this piece took so long and I just really wanted it to get it done. And I was a little bit, how do I say, kind of very submerged in it. And I wasn't really sure, like, it was totally new, and it was so it was a bit like, I don't know what this is, or even if it was good. But so I'm glad that it has been well received. But it was I don't think I've had and then from here I've done these other fabric works in like just sewing. Even though this has machine sewing also, it just takes so long, the process of working with fabric, and some of these other fabric works also with digitally printed. This was also a net of that was digitally printed on silk, also at Joan Mitchell, and I have this other set that I can. I mean, I don't know if you wanted to.
Oh, yes, yes. Now, these reminded me of the pieces that you were working on when you and your husband, Alexis, had that space in Chelsea last summer.
Yes. These I started here, or I had started on this one, and it was nice that Shashama gave me this space for last summer for like 2 months, and it was great to have that space to work on these. But they took like two months each to complete, which is a bit much longer for pieces this size. But it also made me kind of reflect on time and you know, I think on one hand, the pressure that we have as artists to produce made me like question that, and also, and there is something like meditative about this process of sewing and embroidering and attaching things. But you know, so sometimes it was meditative, and sometimes it was like, oh no, it's I can't believe I'm spending so much time. I just want to show, so the green is the printed part of the fabric, and then the color that you see inside this image or inside this design is added by, I'm going to show you the back a little bit.
Oh,
it's added by using lace. So I'm using the lace and putting it behind to add the color.
That's so interesting, Lina. So the lace becomes the structure, or provides the background's infrastructure, instead of being decorative.
Yes, exactly. And what I use to kind of color, and this is a design from that I borrowed from in the indigenous communities of the south of Colombia, near the Amazon border. There are the Kamensa and the Inga, and they weave these wonderful designs into belts, and this has been a very like millenary tradition. And it's women that I have here, a sample here in this case of a belt that they weave. And so this here, I think this, I'm not totally sure, but because I looked at all the references, but this might be the same design as the one that I borrowed to use on here. And this is the design of La Chagra, which means a cultivated land or cultivated garden. And
yes. I was wondering, I was going to ask you to connect these works with your references to the garden.
Yes. So in doing before, so I have here, I know we have short time, but maybe I'll maybe
we have
I'll
time to look at
the,
a couple more.
Okay. So these work. So before I started all of this fabric work, I was doing paper at Donné, and I did a couple of series that are here in the show also. One I had completed before, and another I completed during the residency, but I had done the paper part at Donné Paper Studio in Brooklyn. And these works, maybe I'll look at them. Maybe I'll.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you. These are the Willard crop.
These are the Willard crops, and I mean, it connects to all of the other works in the sense that so the Willard crops specifically are about a New York Times article from 2016 about this agricultural hub in Willard, Ohio, that basically produce celery, cabbage, radishes, and many vegetables that make it into our salad. And for decades, they have welcomed the migrant workers that come to tend to the crops in the spring. And to welcome them, they would hold a festival. But in 2016, because of the anti-immigrant rhetoric that was associated with the election,
right,
the festivities were canceled. So I did this. These are also from the willow crops. So I made this series, imagining the plants and thinking of how before this I did work that was more focused on the workers, and they were the central figure in these works. But then I was started to think a lot about the plants and how they are similarly exploited, just as the migrant workers are. And so I started to imagine them as plants in solidarity with the migrants. So in this series, I decided I imagined the plants welcoming the migrant workers, and this is why I chose like all of these very joyful and celebratory type of colors. And some of them, there are some more kind of subtle figure of hands.
right. Yes, I see that.
So sort of like the human presence. And so I did this work before coming here, and then I had started this other work at Donné called the Kinship series. And I finished it. So when the pandemic hit, I had all of these smaller works so basically this work is all done in the wet paper studio, but after the work is pressed and dried, I bring it to my studio, and then I add, in this case, I added like all of these trims and gouache design with gouache paint on top. Sometimes I use a lot of paint on top, and sometimes I do very minimum. But in this series, I did do a lot of work with gouache, and so this I did during the time that we were
Isolated.
Isolated. Thank you. Yeah. So it was kind of perfect because they were small, and I needed kind of a break from the fabric. So I worked on these, and so I had been thinking, I think the materials in some way were making me reflect more deeply on our relationship with plants. And then I started to read about indigenous knowledge and their relationship to nature. And then it just started to make a lot of sense that there is that we have this almost like synergy that is inherent in us, and that our ancestors I can say universally, our ancestors, like, we were much more connected to nature in ways that I feel that we are missing out. And the connection is not only, it's spiritual also. And it's just, I think it's about respecting more the natural world, and not seeing them as just resources, but I think another, what has been revealed to me in this in doing this work is that I feel for a long time I felt that that this world would be better off without our human presence, but with this work is the opposite. I feel that we are nature, and therefore we are part of this ecosystem, and we are needed for there to be a balance. We need to be in this connection with nature, but not just having appreciation, but I mean, appreciation is needed, but also care and respect. And so thinking of like the cycles of the plant and how the plant bears fruit, first blooms, and
Right.
then there are the pollinators that come and pollinate the plant in order for it to bear fruit. The same way we are kind of part of that cycle, just as the pollinator is part of the plant. We also are part of that cycle of the plant in terms of tending to the plants and having a relationship with it that can bring us also lots of joy, and without having to be so exploitative, which is, I feel that our system is very much based on exploiting all of the natural
Resources. Yeah.
I sometimes don't like resources because, but yeah.
Yeah,
I
hear you. Yeah.
But the natural, but all of our natural, I guess, I mean, like the indigenous call plants, refer to plants as relatives, and it's been interesting to me that indigenous knowledge from North America is very similar to, there's so many similarities to South American and Central America, and so that also has been beautiful for me to learn about.
Nature
yes.
doesn't have borders.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think, if we, I mean, I guess I could go in deeper with this, but yes, I think as we know, many of the indigenous social leaders are the climate or environment, are the biggest environmentalists and have been for a long time. And so I think there is so much we need to learn from them, and in order to have a more, I think there is hope to, with all of this climate crisis and emergency and all of this mess that we have created as a society. I think what we need to change is like our mindset,
Yes. Then understand that our preservation is integrated with the preservation of all other life forms, especially the natural world. And your work is both thoughtful and joyful at the same time. You can critique the way that we've been living, but you also point towards a different possibility while looking back at some of this ancient knowledge that is so relevant, and so inspiring.
And that we can kind of tap into. And I think we can, how do we say, rescue this knowledge that we have kind of lost through this modern way of living, and but that I think it's still in us. So how do we connect to that?
Lina, this has been so exciting. So I just want to ask you two questions, two easy questions. One, do you have space to grow your own vegetables and flowers?
I wish. I'm gonna, while I answer the last question, I'm just gonna show a little bit about this piece that's also from the crops, Whaler Crops series, but
it's just beautiful. So my last question is, how did your audience, your young audience, respond? And did you learn anything that surprised you through the children's responses to the work?
Yes, they were, well, like I said, especially while I was here during the process of the large quilt, they were just so, you know, like for them, it's especially the age group here that is younger, like for them, it's just so natural to see what we sometimes have a hard time seeing, you know? So it was, you know, I especially enjoyed like hearing them point out things that maybe I hadn't completely seen before. So that was great. And I also, part of the residency, I did like weekly lessons in the preschool, and I did, so they did individual weavings, their first weaving, like very, very simple. We did that like over a few lessons, and then I turned it into a quilt that came out really nice. I'm gonna send you a picture of it because they meant to put it in the museum somewhere, but then plans changed. But it turned out really nice.
It's just beautiful. What an accomplishment. The Vegetable Garden and I is a beautiful show, thoughtful, and it closes this weekend, right?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow's the last day.
Yes.
Well, and so what are you working on now, or what have you got coming up, or anything you want to end by sharing with us?
Well, I'm in this show at the Barnes Art Center, which is like an hour away. It's outside of New York, like to the north. And it's going to be all about, it's called Tasting Menu. And so it's going to be with different artists, Gina Beavers, Lucia Hierro. I don't know, there may be like 20 artists, but it's going to be interesting. And that opens at the end of this month. And then in October, I am preparing a survey show with this nonprofit called CODA, and in association, in partnership with Hunter College. So it's going to be in one of the Hunter College galleries, in their East Harlem gallery of Hunter College. Yes.
Well, so I look forward to seeing it if I can. And thank you so much for sharing all this beautiful exhibition, and very, wonderful reflection of what you've been working on in a very challenging time. So
thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lina. Talk to you soon.